And everyone know this is being recorded. So welcome everybody. It is Wednesday. It is midweek. I believe it is January 18th already. Welcome to Innovate BC. We're glad you're here. I hope your day is going well. My name is Michelle. I'm joining from Amiskwaci, Waskagan, Edmonton, Alberta, and my day is going well. The sun is finally out. We haven't seen the sun in a long time, so it feels good. Getting some of that vitamin D. If you have an opportunity, go outdoors, bundle up if you have to, but there's something about that fresh air in the middle of winter and in January. It wakes you up. It reminds you that you're alive, and not to mention that good connection to Mother Earth, to the land. Just to see the beauty that's all around us. So we do give thanks to Creator for the gift of this day, for the gift of this moment, that we can still gather virtually and we can still learn from one another. Our guest speaker is joining us, and I say it all the way because I'm in Alberta, but she's joining us all the way from Ontario. I believe it's Timmins. And so it's beautiful that we can join across this country and just learn and grow and build our capacity and be inspired and have dialogue and perhaps even share stories. So we welcome you. Thank you for joining us. We're always honored when you carve out space just to be with us. So thank you. Thank you. All right. So our guest speaker, Charmaine McCraw. She is the manager of Indigenous engagement and training. She comes from a background of community economic development with 15 years of experience. She is an Irish-Ojibwe born and raised in Northern Ontario. Charmaine has a passion for the North and the development of its people. She's a strong believer in using technology to encourage relationships between our youth and elders, as well as to connect people to opportunity. I love that. That's beautiful. She also believes it's more than just technology-driven change. It's an opportunity to harness converging technologies with lifelong traditional knowledge to create an inclusive, human-centered future for everyone. And, I think she's the one to talk about this topic, which is investment attraction and digital assets in the MetaVerse. And she's going to tell us, all that she's working on, what she's involved in. And we're really honored that you're here. I sat in her webinar before and I was amazed because it's not really the conversation around this metaverse. I had to Google it earlier, but this conversation around the metaverse, is not in my wheelhouse. But when I got to sit down and listen to her and what she's doing, it's brilliant using that modern technology to build opportunity, to build bridges between our youth, the elders, and all of us so that we can learn and take in knowledge in a different way. So it's awesome. So thank you so much, Charmaine, for being here. So there is opportunity. I believe there'll be space at the end for any questions or comments, but also throughout, if you have anything that you're thinking about, a question that comes to mind, put it in the chat box and we'll be sure to come to it. And we'll be sure to, bring that into today's webinar and dialogue and conversation. All right, Charmaine, welcome. Honored to have you here, you and your brilliant mind and your earrings. Thank you for being here. And the floor is yours.
Awesome. Chimiigwech, Michelle. So thank you, everybody, Chimiigwech, for taking some time out of your day to join us here today. My name is Charmaine McCraw. So let's do this in Ojibwe. So Charmaine McCraw Nadishnakaz, Migzi Dodam, Bitagon and Nishnabek and Ojibwa. So I'm coming at you from Timmins. I'm typically in the Thunder Bay area, which is on the north shore of Lake Superior in Ontario. My First Nation is Pick River First Nation, also on the north shore in the Robinson Superior Treaty Group. Just want to take a moment to honor whatever land you are on. I think it's really important that we remind ourselves daily of where we are, the history and knowledge it holds, and where it can bring us into the future. I think that's super, super important. So thank you again, Chimigwech, to Creator, for being able to bring us together. And today I was just telling Michelle, I was working with people from all over the north of Ontario, way up by James Bay area, and working with their employment counselors. So my focus really is on preparing people for the workforce and really giving them the skills and the knowledge that they need to better make decisions on where they want to go, what careers they want to pursue. So it's been a very busy day, but always glad to join the group here at Can-Do. So thanks again, Michelle, for hosting. So I'm going to talk to you. I too am curious as to where everybody is from, but today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a project that we did with the city of Terrace, BC. And a little bit about immersive link tours and kind of how we see that working for communities and in opportunities for economic development. So I really want this to be a conversation. So if you have any questions or just want to, pick my brain or bring up new ideas, please feel free. So it really is today, the kind of focus will be about bringing that boring paper community profile to life using virtual assets, video assets, and really bringing that into a space that we're all just beginning to explore called the MetaVerse. All right, so just a tiny bit about Origin and who we are, so you kind of get an idea. So Origin was created in 2009 and has established relationships with over 100 First Nations across Canada. We work in a collaborative way, so we never go in thinking we know it all. We always go into a relationship wanting to learn, wanting to understand, and then figuring out how to use kind of our innovative tools and technology and how they can help a community to maximize whatever it is they're trying to achieve. So it's really a collaborative approach. It's about working together. It's in our tagline, Origin, let's work together. It's always about that together and that opportunity to learn from one another. So our vision really for our company is to advance economic reconciliation for the Indigenous people of Canada. Everything that we do, everything that our business does drives us. That's what drives us, is really helping Indigenous people to claim their place and really take advantage of everything that there is out there, but also to help share Indigenous culture across Canada as well to both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. So a lot of what has happened through residential school and loss of culture, disconnection to culture and things like that, we work really hard to make sure that even young Indigenous people, middle-aged Indigenous people are getting the opportunity to reconnect with their culture and find that purpose and that pride. Our mission really is creating tech-forward, immersive, inspiring learning experiences, which just change the way we connect to things. In the past, connecting to career was talking to your guidance counselor or looking at flat screen videos about career and trying to make a choice on what you want to do. And also, a lot of people, when they come to connecting to culture, they either have lost family connections and don't have an ability to connect, or so we're just looking at how do we innovate those processes and create meaningful relations with Indigenous communities and corporate Canada. So that's just an Origin in a nutshell. And let's go on here. So Immersive Link, just a bit of a kind of background on it. This is the tool that we have created ourselves. So it's an app. We created an app in 2019 called Immersive Link Careers. And what that was it's a library of 360-degree video experiences viewed through an Oculus headset. We also now can view through Pico headsets. And the idea is just to give the job seeker a peek into different work sites. So they put this headset on, travel to 47 different work sites all over Canada from their living room or their employment counselor office. Then in 2019, we realized the power of our distribution network, which is now in over 1,000 schools. Hundreds of employers across Canada are also using the system, as well as employment and training organizations and community well-being programs themselves. So in 2021, so very recently, we developed immersive link tours. So our software developers, we have in-house software developers and an in-house video production team that work together to create interactive experiences. And they're all 360 video based, so nothing's gamified. It's not computer generated images or anything. It's all very real life, so it's very real experience. So our internal software development team has been busy working hard to incorporate interactive features into those video experiences. We have worked with partners that I'll talk about to kind of prototype and beta test these experiences and to ensure that everybody's getting kind of maximum value from whatever tour they did experience. So I'm going to play a short, it's not long, a short video. It's just a little bit more visual in explaining what the tours are and how they can be used. So I have to giggle sometimes at the music our video producers like to use in the background to create that intrigue and that emotion behind things. Better them than me, because I don't know what kind of music I'd have going in the background. So that was just kind of a short kind of preview of different ways that you can use the immersive link tours and the interactivity in there. But the opportunity, or the project, I guess I really want to talk about today for the Innovate BC webinar here is, we came across an opportunity. So we had been working with, or just beginning a relationship with Kitimat Valley Education Society, and we were submitting together on a funding application where we were going to use immersive link in their classes, in their facilities, to really give recruiters, student services, a different way to connect with clients and students. And so Origin was going to be anticipated to be a supplier on that project. So we're always about creating partnerships no matter what, always reaching out to, I don't know, First Nations everywhere. Last year in March, we were just up in Northwest Territories in Fort McPherson, and that was amazing. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. But regardless, the funding proposal didn't end up getting approved, and that was okay. But when this RFP from the city of Terrace came through, we approached KVS, and together we co-responded in a joint submission to this RFP. The city of Terrace was excited to see Indigenous stakeholders and business respond, and we were awarded the contract. So the RFP was really about producing virtual reality video and development of an investment attraction focused tour or website. And so they were looking for people across Canada. They received applications from all over the place, including the United States. And but one of the things that super intrigued them was the partnership between Origin and KVES, sorry. So it was really fun to start to think and dream about what we could do together. And the motivation for Kitimat was, the more Terrace develops, the more investment attraction that they get, the more opportunity there are for our people that are living in the area. So that was kind of the strategy and the thinking behind that partnership. Terrace at first was like, whoa, Ontario and KVS, how did you guys come together? And honestly, it comes together just naturally at conferences, making friends, making connections, and that's usually how we find some of our coolest partners. So that was the opportunity, and so we responded. So I will show you the Terrace promo, I guess, and then we can just discuss a little bit on how it was produced and the things that communities need to think about if they want to do something like this as well. So during COVID, Terrace was really trying to define or figure out a way where they could still look at investors. They have this huge industrial park, Skeena Park, and tons of investment opportunities. And the one thing that was hurting them and developing this park was being able to find investors that, but they couldn't come and see, they couldn't come and check it out. They couldn't really visit BC because there was that, all the restrictions around COVID and that. So when we went there, and it was really interesting. So we captured, the unique scenes, the opportunities that the community or the city of Terrace had. We collected all kinds of background information that had been done. So all these kind of digital reports and things. And we were able, our software developers were able to kind of plant things in the experience. So when you have the headset on, you're like, okay, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the railway. Okay, that means there's awesome transportation, but I want to know a little bit more information. So you're able to interact with the experience, click on the buttons, choose, to listen to another video that is on a flat screen that might give a little bit more information. So the really cool part about that is no matter what your community has done to develop assets in a flat screen view, we can use those assets and we can plant them into the experience. So it was a really interesting development for Immersive Link and for our tours. So the City of Terrace was kind of like our it was our second one that we had done. We had done one with the City of Thunder Bay as well. But the City of Terrace was super impressed. So now what they do is when they're at trade shows, when they travel abroad, when they go overseas to do their investment attraction, they just bring a headset with them, and it really literally brings that investor right to the Skeena Development Park. So it gives the investor a great opportunity to be in BC without even being in BC. And it's a really great opportunity. And I think about, when I think of the communities that I work with and the opportunities for development or partnerships on projects, I think about the remoteness of some of our communities and the inability for certain investors to be able to get there or travel there. Sometimes, there's only certain airlines that fly up north. So it's a big remoteness is quite a big thing in our area, as it is in many of the provinces across Canada. So just having this tour is it's an ability to present your community in a different way. Instead of just a piece of paper. I've in economic development, so I've been an active officer, active community developer for a long time, 15 years or so. And one of the things the governments always give us money to do is to develop profiles. Okay, here, develop your community profile. All right, well, how do you portray the uniqueness of your community on a piece of paper? It's really hard. It's really hard to do. So any investor could look and say, okay, and I mean, unless you have super dynamic photos or things like that, you can get looked over, right? And that's one of the things that the tour really does, is it really allows the potential investor to take a look very deeply at your community and feel what you feel when you're at home. So we worked with the City of Terrace in BC, and that was for investment attraction. And again, for investment attraction, we get money from governments to do that as well. Let's do investment attraction. Well, even like traditional knowledge mapping, same kind of thing. You got a map of a community and you don't really kind of, you can look at statistics, you can look at things, but you can't vision the development. You can't vision what it might be like to work in that community or partner with that community to help something happen. So it was really, really cool. So City of Terrace, we worked investment attraction. We worked with Voyageur Wilderness. So this was a project that we did through ITO, Indigenous Tourism Ontario, and we have branches across Canada for that as well. But one of the businesses we worked with was called Voyageur Wilderness. And what we did was we created a virtual tour of her resort. And this was coming out of the pandemic and trying to help Indigenous tourism operators kind of rebuild their customer networks and survive from that. So that tour, she again uses at trade shows. It brings people, it attracts people to want to come to her resort in a way that pictures and paper never could. We then use the functionality of the tour to work with ASUMA. So ASUMA is based out of, or is an organization that focuses around education and furthering education goals in the Nunavik area. And they're in northern Quebec. And a lot of their students come down from Quebec, from way up in northern Quebec, like way up there, Hudson Bay area. And they have to come to Montreal to go to school. So with this, using the same functionality as we did with the investment attraction tour, we use this in a way to help familiarize students with Montreal before they even got there. So it helped their parents understand, it helped the students understand, gave them a good idea of what to expect when they're at the airport, what to expect getting on the bus, what to expect getting to the college. So, and again, being able to interact in the Terrace promo, we've seen, or sorry, in the very first promo, we've seen the little audio cue. So we can, plant different translations in, we can do all kinds of things. So if your host or whoever is speaking in the experience is one language, we can plant other languages in there so that it's not just for an English speaking person, it can be for an Ojibwe, it can be for, anybody kind of, some of the Gwich'in people, any kind of languages we can plant in there, which is very user friendly, especially if you're going to look for investors in key areas, and that they're of a different language than you, then it may be helpful to actually put their own language in it, right? It just draws that more emotional attachment to potentially investing in a product like this. We then worked with Arctic Indigenous Innovations, and I talked about that a little bit more in depth in our last webinar, where we worked with the Tetlit Gwich'in people in Fort McPherson and really worked with their elders and youth to create a traditional knowledge tour. We've more recently worked with Red Rock Indian Band here in Ontario, where actually that's where Melissa Hardy-Giles is from. So the owner or the CEO of our company, Melissa Hardy-Giles, is from Red Rock Indian Band. And what we did this year was we worked with Red Rock to commemorate their powwow. So, and it was their 25th anniversary powwow, and it was huge. It was amazing. And they did some things that were really different, and they really wanted to explain that to the world. And in the Grand Entry, they let the children lead, and that never happens in Grand Entry. Grand Entry is always our royalty and our elders and our traditional dancers and things. But in this Grand Entry, they let the youth lead, and there was a really powerful message behind that. So we created a tour for them all around that, all about teaching dance styles and really empowering our youth to know that you have all of this traditional knowledge, all of this ancestry behind you, and letting you lead into the world. And then a more economic development focused one was from Pegwashing, which is Pays Plat, Ontario, Pays Plat First Nation. And they were looking for a way to work with they have a lot of outside contractors that come into their community to work. So before the contractors come into the community, it's one of the mandatory things is that they watch and explore the Pegwashing tour. And so they get a real good understanding of what's important to the community and things they need to be aware about, special areas in the community and special messages from the community. So it's a really good way to have a concrete message that you want delivered to people that are not from your nation, to understand and know before they come into your territory. So those are some of the partners that we've kind of worked on developing this tour and this interactivity piece in our software. So very fun, very cool stuff. One of the key things when we're doing this type of, so we built the tour, that's amazing, right? But now we need to really think about defining a marketing plan. What are you going to do with this tour? What do you want to achieve with it? So it's not just about creating the asset itself. It's you have to have that marketing plan, that wraparound plan, because without that, it becomes okay, well, that was cool, but what are we doing with it? Why did we spend the money to do that? So ensuring that you're defining your marketing plan is really important. So any kind of marketing plan needs a digital marketing strategy with kind of all the up-to-date tools, making sure you're on the right channels, things like that. And really looking at, if you're going to build a tour like this and use this as a tool for investment attraction, we do suggest pairing it with an investment attraction microsite. So it could be within your own website if you already have one, but really working with a marketing kind of guru that will help you make sure that you're getting the right people to watch your tour, you're getting the right people to that page so that you're getting the investment that you're looking for. So, there's thinking about strategy and planning, brand positioning, doing the content development, doing the microsite, and then search engine optimization. This is something that nobody, or it's a language I don't even understand. So very important, very, very important to work with a marketer that understands what that means. Because in the digital world today, that is how the World Wide Web recognizes things. So if you do not have search engine optimization done on your website or any of your digital marketing tools, you won't get seen and it won't hit the audiences that you're trying to get. So always remember that search engine optimization piece. It's complicated, but there's specialists out there. So focus on, try to find someone who knows what they're talking about in that area, because yeah, you could get lost real easy. Some things to think about. So if you're gonna say you want to plan, you want to do a tour. So you've seen these kind of things and you're like, hey, I think this would be really good for my community. I have some opportunities and I really want to market my community in a different way. So these are just kind of some of the things that we would help you with. But if you want to do some storming, some brainstorming with your own team when you're thinking about it, and these are some things you need to think about. So you need to think about the scenes. So what is the topic? What types of things do you want to advertise about your community? What are your potential investment opportunities? Where do you need partners? Where do you need assistance? Or where do you need, so think about kind of the topics, the objectives. So the objective of the scene, it's not just to see the scene. What do you want people to feel in that scene? What do you want people to know? What are the other reference materials and things that we can plant into that tour so that it becomes an effective tool? So although, like, I know in Terrace, when we were in some of the forests, and the forests are beautiful. The trees are huge, and like literally, I mean, I grew up in the bush, so I love nature. But I could literally stand in one of those terrace scenes and just look at the trees and I'd be happy, right? But that's not the intent. The intent really was to get people to understand that forestry is one of their initiatives actually in terrace, and harnessing the opportunity around forestry. So that's why that forestry scene was chosen. So you have to think about the objective of the scene. So not just a topic, not just where it's going to be, but the objective and things that you want to achieve in that scene. Then you got to think about script. What are we going to say? What needs to be said in there? Does anything need to be said? Should we just plant the other audio? Should we plant more images or other video or text so that the user can kind of navigate their own experience? There's a couple different ways you can create these virtual experiences. And one is to have a hosted experience. So host would greet you when you put the headset on. Host would, I'm just trying to see if I have one here, but I don't. But put the headset on, a gentleman from Terrace, BC welcomes you. Actually, I think it's the lady from the Chamber of Commerce, to be honest, meets you and greets you and says, come on in and check out our industrial park. And then she disappears magically, and the user gets to navigate through the industrial park at their own at their own pace. So there's a few different ways. So you got to think about that too. What type of experience do I want? Do I want a hosted experience, or do I want an experience where the user kind of controls the outlook? So all of those things. And then always, again, thinking about location. You want things to be eye-catching. You want things to be like, whoa, like I feel cool standing here, or I feel different. And the other thing is thinking about speakers. So although we say here to think about a script, it's always so much better when things are natural. And so you got to look for speakers from your community that are comfortable speaking the language you're asking them to speak. So not language as in English or Ojibwe or others, but more around language of specialty, so field, so economic development. So you need somebody that can speak in ECDev terms, that is comfortable, so it doesn't look like they're reading off a paper when they're hosting the experience. So those are some things that you can think about typically tours will have, you can build as many scenes as you want, but one thing we recommend people to focus on is try to focus on 3 or 4. What are the things that you really want to tell about your community? What is that profile that you really want to bring to life, and focus on those 4. The other cool thing is we can build on the tour. So we can start with 4 environments, 4 scenes, and we can build. So if you have funding for a certain amount of things, you can start with that, but it can always be built on, which is also super cool. So I'd love to hear, so I know there's not too many on the call today, but I really would love to hear from people. So I know this gets posted on the Can-Do website. What helps us at Origin to kind of adapt and grow is really hearing from communities, what types of investment opportunities are available in your community. And then we bring that back and we work with our creative team and our producers and figure out the best way to be able to highlight that in community and give it, like, we're not always, of course we want to come and work with you, but we do want you to figure out your own ways too, to be able to promote your community. So these are all great questions to always ask and have answered, and ask your community to. That's one thing I've learned in economic development. You can never do too much stakeholder engagement, and our community members are some of our biggest stakeholders. So, what investment opportunities are in your community? Are you looking for development partners? So maybe it's not investment where you're purchasing, but maybe it's you're looking to build a new gym or a new arena or things like this. Or so is it development partners that you're looking for? You really need to define that audience. Does your community have a developed profile already? And how can we build on that and use that as an asset? Because the last thing we want to do is throw away everything you've ever done. So we want to use as many of the assets as you have in that tour to make it as robust as possible. Another question to ask is, do you have non-nation people or contractors working in your territory? This is a way for you to communicate with them. It's a way for you to kind of say your message, so that they understand where they're about to start working, and the value your community holds, and hopefully that they can understand after watching kind of the experience or going through the tour. And we always want to also, we're always open to hearing best practices. So best practices that you have done in your community, any best practices you want to share. I think one of the things we were talking about here is so many times, many of our communities work in silos, and they're working, I'm doing this, and I'm not telling you what I'm doing. And that doesn't get us anywhere. We need to figure out, and share our best practices, share ideas, share what's working really well, share what's working really bad. And that's how we come together. That's how we learn. That's how we grow as nations across Canada. And then think about also too, when you go to trade shows, I know a lot of trade shows or conferences even, how do you represent your community at conferences and trade shows? Could this be something that could be very useful for you, if you're trying to even maybe attract people, or depending on where your nation is, right? Every nation is different, and every nation has a different outlook and view and vision for their community. Some communities are, looking for just investors. Some people are looking for partners that really want to work together with community. And you're able to use these types of virtual assets, digital assets, to do that in person. But when we talk about the metaverse, you can also plant these types of things in these MetaVerse rooms. So people are now becoming avatars. So the movie Avatar? That's a legit thing. Okay. So I'm just learning a lot about the metaverse. And one of the things I'm going to be doing this March is hosting my very first youth conference in the metaverse. And we're working, it's a small pilot right now, but we're going to be working with 20 youth from all over Ontario. And we're going to come together in a metaverse conference space. So there'll be all kinds of you'll put the headset on and it'll be like you're walking around, but you have an avatar in that virtual world walking around. Now, what's really cool is this is happening more and more and more than we even know. It's really kind of out of this world. So there's shopping malls, there's MetaVerse, there's shopping malls in the MetaVerse where you can put the headset on and walk into like the Gap, or I don't know what's another store, Sephora, and literally be shopping, hand touching, holding things, looking at products in the MetaVerse. And so similar to this, when investors are exploring this more and more, especially investors from overseas, is they're looking for communities that are in the MetaVerse. And so if you get your MetaVerse space and you plant in your tour, it's literally, there will be avatars walking around whatever community you're from. It's really, really out of this world. Lots of new things to learn and think about. So one of the things people still have a hard time kind of grasping, well, what virtual reality, what does that even mean? Like, it's still a thing that is people are just becoming aware of, even though virtual reality has been around for like a long time, but it's just becoming very popular. And one of the things that we find to get people on board, because we know nothing happens well without buy-in, without community, without people behind you understanding you and rooting for you and believing in what you're trying to do. So one of the things that we like to encourage at Origin is bringing in, it's just a simple VR open house, and really getting elders, youth, community members just familiar with what are the possibilities. And so one of the things that we always encourage people to do is contact us and figure out a way that we can come and we can host a VR open house in your community. This way we bring the headsets, they get to try it out, and they're like, okay, I can see this now. And really that aha moment happens. Without experiencing it, it's very hard to talk about. It's very hard to give people that impact and feeling of what it's like to be in those spaces. So even we try to demo it on video, we try to do these things, but it really doesn't work well. So this is kind of something that we work with communities to develop. And this is one of the a kind of example of what we would develop for you if you chose for us to come in and work with you. So we know that in order to get people to come to open houses or community meetings, we have to draw them in. And so we try to work and develop kind of marketing and promotional assets for any community that we work with to really help them make sure that they're getting the biggest community involvement that they can. And yeah, so I don't know, that's about what I got to say. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or has things they want to talk about or share with me, or if you want me to follow up at any point, but yeah, open for any kind of conversation at this point.
Awesome, Charmaine. Thank you. This is fascinating. You had me at shopping. Give me a headset. Let me go shopping. I'm curious, and then we're opening the floor. So all of you get your questions, comments ready. But so say a community would be interested in offering a virtual tour. So they'd have to hire somebody to come. So what would like an ballpark cost be for that to happen?
So that's a really hard question because a lot of times it depends. So, typically we're looking per environment. So if we wanted to do 3 environments per environment, we're looking at about 10 grand. It really depends. So it depends on how remote it is. It depends on where we got to go. We're working on getting those costs down. I mean, the other things that we can do and leverage, it's a bit of a hit financially at first, which is why we always suggest that marketing strategy wrapped around it so that you're getting return on investment. So it's not just a fun thing to do. It requires a strategy behind it and how you're going to use it. But in that one environment, you can plant as many different things as you want, right? So a tour when we think of tours, we think of like, I don't know, going on a guided tour and walking through a provincial park or something like that. It's not that intense, let's say. And there's so many things to take into consideration when we go into production. So that's not a firm number, but it's not cheap. I'll just say that. But it's definitely something we like to, especially with economic development, leverage the funds that our provincial and federal governments put out there to do investment attraction, especially when it comes to that. Also, when it comes to cultural preservation, there is a duty for our federal government to help that happen. And so we always like to also work with communities. Me as an ECDev officer, there's money out there. Let's find the money, right? Doesn't need to come out of direct pockets. I'm always open to working on funding applications with communities as well.
Awesome. Earlier on when you were talking about this, I could see myself taking that tour, but to also learn my language at the same time. Like, there's a tree. What does that word mean in Cree? Like, the possibilities of this, of revitalizing our culture, but also connecting our young people to, the stories, to have the elders tell, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, gorgeous avenue in which, we can connect to our communities, our people, but then also learn about others. All right, so Bonnie, and she has a comment, great concept and marketing tools. So she kind of is hitting on what you had talked about, anything about grants to get some of the support costs covered. So you had made mention that there could be grants out there that
definitely. I think one of the ones that come to mind for me right away is I'm Ontario based, so it's hard. I'd have to really look at the systems wherever your community is and then kind of identify the funds that would fall in line with that. But trust me, there is definitely money out there. When you talk about the teaching or hearing things, we developed through a funding pot, developed a 7 grandfather teachings tour. So one really cool thing is, you hear the teaching in the language. So right now we have an Ojibwe, but we're looking at expanding to other languages. But you hear the teaching, you see the scenery. So when we talk about the bear, we actually have video of a bear. So some people never even seen a bear before, right? So, and then connections and things planted in the experience to get them to really reflect about the teachings. So yeah, super cool. I see Ken has a question.
Yeah, come on in, Ken.
Yeah, Charmaine, as you were going through it, I was envisaging selling your services in the form of a fishbone diagram. So in the fishbone diagram, just like a regular fish with bones, and you go off on one bone. It might be potential workers. So you'd say, I've got this community has so many people of this demographic, young people, and then what's their education? So they may be underemployed now. They may be doing retail, but they maybe have technical skills. So that bone goes off in different directions. So there's an availability for people, and then another one might be for retail, available stores or buildings that are currently available. and what opportunities are there. You know, we have a lack of, I don't know, clothing stores. And then another fishbone might go off and it might be industrial, so industrial service land. And the rest of the profile, well, you know what I'm talking about, but every each bone. So if you show the fishbone, they could very quickly pick the bone that they're most interested in, because they may be interested in some non-union, low, you know, not cheap employment, but not expensive employment. That maybe that people would move on. So their main interest might be in workers that are available now, that would be interested in the kinds of pay that they're going to do. And then another one might be service land. So you've got, you know, and you know all about that. But each bone would go off on a certain direction, which would add some organization, so they could very quickly maneuver through your service. Just as you were talking, I didn't see that connection. Whereas like a fishbone diagram, and that's the first thing that came to mind, would be a nice way of organizing it so that you could sell it. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, that's a really cool concept, Ken. Thanks for sharing that, for sure. One of the features that we have added is the 3D kind of map of the territory, right? So wherever you are, and then people can click the map at any point and navigate to different areas. That's a really cool concept, though, of using the fishbone and to be able to navigate an experience. I really like that. Thanks. I appreciate that suggestion.
All right. Well, any more questions out there? As you were talking about that youth summit, that's the wrong word, conference, virtual conference. You know what? I was reminded, I was in the metaverse. I was there's one youth conference right when the pandemic was happening and everything went to Zoom, and it was really cool. Like, I kind of didn't understand. I was like, it blew my mind, because I was like, we're not, my generation, we're just not used to that. So it was awesome. But the youth were all about that. That was like, this is their language, right? This is their kind of wheelhouse. So yeah, that took me back. Thanks for that memory.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions? All right, come on in. Yeah, I see you.
Hi, Charmaine. Thanks very much for the presentation. And AR and VR has been very interesting to me for years, but I haven't seen anyone doing it well and doing it in this space. And I'm wondering if you had any experience with some of these old thoughts I've had on use of AR, and that is on going back in time from a climate perspective, but also going forward in time to imagine where rising temperatures, retreating glaciers, changing landscapes will take us, and see if there's a learning opportunity from that. The other one was related to that, and that is on disasters. So looking at if a flood happens, where is that water level going to? What so that we can get an idea of what those types of disasters will have on our community before they happen. Because I think that will inspire action rather than reaction.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely applications and ways to incorporate that. Some of the computer generated stuff, like to be able to predict where things are if a flood happens, what does it look like? Where are the points that we need to reinforce or things like that. We're not quite to that point at Origin, but definitely would be interested in helping or finding a partner that would have an interest in exploring something like that.
So, thanks very much for the response, and it just might help another attendee asking about funding. There may not be funding for developing a tourism asset like this, but there might be funding for developing an emergency response, emergency planning, or resilience planning asset. So we might be able to get two objectives achieved through this and through you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'm going to do post this is kind of take a look through some funding pots and really kind of be able to suggest to everybody where they might go. I've been working the mines department pretty hard here in Ontario about using this for traditional mapping, traditional knowledge mapping. So many of our communities are approached over and over and over again by industry on, you know, oh, well, we need your knowledge on this, we need your knowledge on this. And a lot of the times our communities are they're tired, or they don't have time to respond, or they don't have the resources to respond. So, you know, using this tool as a way to map out that traditional knowledge and continue to build on that, it's the opportunities are endless, right? And then really the knowledge keeper that is sharing that information with the person that's asking, instead of it just being an X on a map, it becomes an experience where he can talk about the family values to that spot, or the cultural importance of that spot. And the person or industry or developer or government puts that on, they get such a more relevant feeling and understanding of how important that land is. Because when we look in you know, a traditional knowledge mapping, and it's so, I don't know, it's like, it's hard, right? Like the knowledge keeper spends so much energy in telling you the stories of that place and the cultural value of that place, but it gets X, that's all. That's marked as an X, as a cultural value, and that's so not fair. So we've really been advocating to kind of use this to be able to really enhance traditional knowledge mapping, and the unnecessary use of resources over and over and over again, when they're always asked the same questions, you know, when investors, developers want to come and take instead of give. So we also pressure our developers to, you know, hey, why don't you chip in some money here and help this community develop things like that. That's also an avenue. We do like to work together with community, industry, and knowledge keepers, youth, because we need to start to place onus a little bit on the developers and on the employers more and more. So I'm a strong believer in that. That might not be that's a Charmaine view. That's a view from my experience for a long time, is really, that's where the onus should be, is, you know, that corporate and social responsibility to give back to communities. And this is one way that really they can, because, you know, once you develop a traditional knowledge tour or a map, that will be there for generations to come, you know, and generations of people that may not even live in their home First Nation, but are in an urban center or urban area. They could put that headset on and go home, you know, and that's super important. So there's the possibilities are so endless with this. And it is really just about, you know, let's figure out the funding. Money is always hard, you know, we're in the society world that we live in today, there's just not enough to go around, but there are ways. And as economic development officers, we know there's money out there. It's just, how do you get it and where do you get it from? So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Here we appreciate and value the Charmaine viewpoint. So thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate, we really honor, your attendance, your questions, your curiosity to this conversation. So thanks everybody for being here. You will get this PowerPoint sent to you afterwards. So just so you have that as a resource, as a tool. This also will be put up, the webinar itself will be put up on the Can-Do website. So you have that as well. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Charmaine. Thank you. Go get some supper, relax for the rest of your evening, and everyone else, have a good rest of the day. Thank you for joining us. Be well. We'll see you again.
Okay. I'm happy.
Anything.